Hi. Um, as you heard earlier, I'm a recovering book publisher, and I've written, I think, 13 books so far. Isn't that, geez, you got to do something. Anyway, I'm on the jury for this year's various awards, and it was a great experience to be on the jury because there was so much to read that was so good. And actually, I didn't expect there to be so many wonderful books. It's very encouraging. Anyway, I'm here to present, and I'm hoping that somewhere up there's a way to show Ayelet Tsabari, whose book, Songs for the Brokenhearted, is the winner of this year's fiction award. It's already won an award in the United States, and in fact, I was reading an interview with her in the New York Times that said, "I come from a long line of house cleaners. After October 7, I knew exactly what to do." The novel is set in the complex history of Yemeni Jewish diaspora, refugees from Arab countries, and its broken heart. It is a novel about love and loss and about finding a new way forward.
Hello, everyone. I am honored and thrilled to be the recipient of the Canadian Jewish Literary Award for Fiction. I'm so sad to be missing the ceremony, especially since I'm going to be standing on this very stage exactly a week from today to celebrate the beginning of Mizrahi Heritage Month. But such is life. When I moved to Canada nearly 30 years ago, I couldn't have imagined how much this place would change my life. It is where I started writing in English, where I met my partner, where I gave birth to my child, and where I began my career as an author. And still, after moving back home to Tel Aviv to be with my family, I feel a strong bond with this place and its people. And I am so moved that you include me and honor my work with this award. I have said dramatically before, because I'm a writer, that Songs for the Brokenhearted feels like the novel I was born to write. I wrote this book as a love song to my Jewish Yemeni community in Israel. It takes place in the Yemeni neighborhood where my family comes from, and it is steeped in the sounds and smells and sights of my childhood visits to my grandmother's. As a girl growing up in Israel, a girl who dreamt of becoming an author, I never read stories that featured Yemeni characters, and I've never seen myself or my family represented in literature. And as it is often the case, the dearth of stories was even more glaring when it came to women. In Yemen, the women were illiterate. And as I began delving into Yemeni culture and history, I learned that singing was their way of telling stories. It was their way of sharing, of being creative, of owning their narrative. That made perfect sense to me. I always sang. Singing was a big part of our lives as Yemeni Israelis. So my discovery of the women's songs not only gave me a sense of where my novel was going, but also led to a huge personal epiphany. I used to envy my Ashkenazi friends for their literary heritage. Now I realized I had one too, and it was rich and feminine and beautiful, and it was mine. I discovered a pantheon of illiterate Yemeni poetesses whose shoulders I am standing on. and it became my goal to celebrate and honor them. By writing this book, by including their songs, my own writing became a part of this tradition that was carried through generations and across countries. I became a part of the dissemination and a part of the act of passing it on. I cannot speak of this book without mentioning that it takes place during 1995. It is set against the Oslo Accords, a time of great turmoil, but maybe greater hope for both Israelis and Palestinians. Sadly, this scenario looks so far away nowadays, and the title perhaps more relatable than ever. I would like to take this opportunity to say, despite how naive it may sound to some, maybe to many, that I still hold on to that hope that the Oslo Accords introduced, to the belief that coexistence is possible and necessary and maybe the only way. And I refuse to let go of it, despite how broken my heart may be. I want to thank my editors, and especially the inimitable Jennifer Lambert, who is accepting the award on my behalf today, and who won an award herself this week, Professional Association of Canadian Literary Agents Person of the Year Award. Thank you for everything, for your guidance and for your support and for your friendship. I also want to thank the Canadian Jewish Literary Awards for your ongoing support of me and of Jewish authors, and for selecting songs for the Brokenhearted. And I share this award with the incredible women who've inspired me in writing this novel, the women in my family, the women who shared their stories with me during my research, who cried with me and sang with me, and the unknown Yemeni poetesses whose voices and stories are threaded throughout this novel. This award is also for them. Thank you again for this incredible honor. I'm so grateful. Yagub, Immigrant Camp, Machane Olim Rosh Ha'ain, 1950. Years later, when they are old, sitting on a porch somewhere overlooking the sea, someone would ask them how it all started, and he'd say, as soon as he saw her on the other side of the drinking fountain at the immigrant camp, he knew. The air smelled of citrus, a sweet, tangy scent Yagub had until then associated with Israel, because when they got off the planes, it flooded his nostrils. But from that moment on, it was her it evoked. He was washing his hands before dinner. She was scrubbing dishes, using sand in lieu of dish soap, her face round and open, her eyes long lashed and lined with kohl. She was dressed in a buttoned floral dress and a red cardigan. In the camp, they were all given used winter clothes that looked nothing like the traditional clothing they left behind in Yemen. Shoes, too, which they slipped onto their calloused, untrained feet. Feet accustomed to cracked earth and soft sand and rugged rocks. They looked up at the same time and their eyes met. And it was as though his heart stopped, or he was struck by lightning, or some other terrible cliche he'd feel embarrassed by as soon as it crossed his lips. He tried to rewrite it and fail, because, of course, rewriting only works on paper. Still, he'd do his best. He'd gaze up at the sky, eyes squinted in concentration to the delight of the listeners on the porch, and he'd say it was like everyone else vanished from the camp. And all the other smells that permeated the air, sewage and sweat and mildew and rotten garbage, evaporated. And all that was left was the scent of oranges and the two of them looking at each other over a two-sided rusty water fountain. She blushed and looked away. Someone behind Yaqub nudged him, urging him to stop hugging the tab, and he walked away from her gaze and her smile. When he looked back, so did she. No, I didn't, Saida would argue. I would never. But this is how he remembered it. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. So yes, I am Jennifer Lambert. I'm the editor-in-chief at HarperCollins Canada. And of course, it was my great honor to work with Ayelet and to be here on her behalf. She and I have worked together over all of her award-winning books. So she's not only an accomplished fiction writer, her short story collection won the Samuel Rohr Prize for Jewish Literature some time ago, but also her moving and stirring memoir, The Art of Leaving, was shortlisted for the Hilary Weston Prize for Nonfiction and won the Canadian Jewish Literary Award. So it's quite astonishing and astounding to say that this novel, The Songs for the Brokenhearted, is her debut novel, which in fact it is. And what's even more astounding is the novel itself, which places her, in my view, among the top writers of her generation. As you've heard from Ayelet, and no one speaks more eloquently than her about her work, Songs for the Brokenhearted is set in Israel in two time periods. In 1950 in a Yemeni immigrant camp, and in 1995 in the weeks leading up to the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. It carries within it both cultural and political history. But as Ayelet described, it's also the story of a Yemeni-Israeli family and a love story. In her skillful hands, we explore mother-daughter relationships, the obligations of marriage, the profound effects of grieving lost parents and lost children, the lure of fringe politics and belonging to young men, and finally the beautiful gift of a young woman connecting with her own heritage through the songs and poetry of Yemeni women. This novel is a towering achievement, written with love for a people and a place and with a clear-eyed view of history, and in it a palpable connection to today. I'm deeply thankful on behalf of HarperCollins for the recognition of this book and this author by these awards. One further word about Ayelet herself, though of course you saw that on the screen, a warmer, more curious, more dedicated and generous writer and person you could not hope to meet. So while I'm sorry she's not here today, I'm thrilled that she will be in Toronto for a set of events this coming week, which we've heard mentioned on October 30th at the Anne Tannenbaum Center, and then here at the JCC on November 1st in an event featuring live music, art, and a reading by Ayelet. I hope we'll see you there. Thank you again to the jury and to the awards.